Erich von Däniken sold nearly 70 million books across his whole career, by arguing that ancient civilizations had been visited by astronauts from other worlds. When he died on January 10, 2026, the theory he popularized was still very much alive, on television, online, and in the way millions of people picture the ancient past. His claims connected extraterrestrial visitors to the pyramids, the Nazca Lines, the monuments of Easter Island, and the gods of ancient cultures everywhere. Commercially, it was an enormous success. But success is not evidence. So what actually happens when his most famous individual claims are placed beside the archaeology they consistently ignored? Erich von Däniken was not an archaeologist, a historian, or a scientist of any kind. In 1968, he was managing a hotel in the Swiss Alps when he published Chariots of the Gods, the book that launched his career. Around the same period, he became involved in financial fraud, and was later convicted and served a prison sentence. His legal history raised real questions about his reliability. But it is not, by itself, the reason his archaeological claims fail. Those claims have to be tested individually, against the evidence. His book's core argument was simple and seductive. Many ancient monuments, from the pyramids to Stonehenge to the Nazca Lines, reflected a level of technical sophistication von Däniken believed ancient people could not have achieved alone. His explanation was extraterrestrial visitors, mistaken for gods, who shared advanced knowledge with early humans. The scientific response was swift. Astronomer Carl Sagan argued that von Däniken repeatedly treated his own lack of an explanation as evidence for extraterrestrial intervention. Archaeologists accused him of selectively citing evidence and ignoring research that already explained the very mysteries he claimed to solve. None of that stopped Chariots of the Gods from becoming an international bestseller, and von Däniken's books eventually sold nearly 70 million copies worldwide. Take the Nazca Lines. In southern Peru, hundreds of straight lines and large figures of animals and plants, etched into the desert floor over an area of more than 100 square miles. Von Däniken argued they were landing strips built for extraterrestrial aircraft. Archaeologists had already been studying the lines for decades before his book appeared, and their explanation was very different. The geoglyphs were created broadly between about 500 BCE and 500 CE, spanning the Paracas and Nazca traditions rather than a single-dated project. By removing a layer of darker surface stone to expose the paler soil underneath, a technique confirmed through direct excavation. Researcher Maria Reiche developed an influential astronomical interpretation, proposing the lines functioned as a kind of calendar aligned with solstices and star positions. Later research, however, has not supported the idea that the entire system functioned as one unified astronomical calendar. Current interpretations instead emphasize a combination of ritual movement, sacred landscape, water symbolism, and social activity, possibly alongside some genuine astronomical relationships. Many figures also closely match motifs found on local pottery, connecting the lines to documented cultures rather than an unexplained one. Their exact purposes remain debated, but their construction did not require flight. Straight lines and large figures could be laid out using stakes, cords, and ground-level surveying, while parts of the landscape were visible from surrounding elevations. Or take what's sometimes called the Baghdad Battery, a small clay jar containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod, excavated near Baghdad in the 1930s, dated to the Parthian or Sassanid period, roughly 2,000 years old. When a modern replica is filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, it can generate a small electric current, and this experiment led to dramatic claims that ancient Mesopotamians had secretly invented the battery, more than 1,000 years before Alessandro Volta. But producing a voltage in a modern replica is not the same as proving that ancient people designed or used an electrical technology. The object's exact purpose remains genuinely uncertain. Archaeologists have proposed that it may have held a rolled scroll, a protective charm, or some other ritual object, based on comparable jars excavated at nearby Seleucia. What is missing is any evidence that it formed part of a working electrical system. No confirmed wiring, no switches or connective fittings, no documented network of linked jars, no securely identified electroplated objects from the period, and no ancient text describing anything like it. The scroll or charm explanation remains one proposed interpretation among archaeologists, not a settled consensus. What can be said with confidence is simpler and less dramatic. There is no reliable evidence that this jar, or others like it, were ever used to generate electricity in the ancient world. And then there is one of von Däniken's most famous single images, the carved stone lid on the sarcophagus of the Maya ruler Pakal at Palenque in Mexico. Von Däniken described the central figure as an astronaut seated inside a rocket ship, complete with controls and an exhaust flame. Maya scholars read the same carving very differently, and with far more supporting context. Pakal appears at the threshold between the underworld and the heavens, framed by funerary imagery and the Maya world tree, a cosmological symbol that recurs throughout Maya art and inscriptions across multiple sites and centuries. Scholars debate the precise direction of the movement shown, descent, emergence, or rebirth, but the visual language clearly belongs to an established Maya religious system, not to a mechanical vehicle. As for the pyramids of Giza themselves, archaeologists have excavated an entire adjacent settlement, bakeries, housing, administrative and production areas, and evidence that injured workers received medical care. That evidence points to organized, provisioned labor crews, rather than the popular image of masses of chained slaves, though labor arrangements likely varied. The evidence supports human construction using stone and copper tools, ropes, sledges, ramps in some form, and highly coordinated labor, all backed by quarry marks, tool marks, and worker graffiti. The precise ramp configuration used remains genuinely debated among specialists. We do not need every engineering detail settled to conclude that human beings built the pyramids. So why did this theory endure for more than 50 years, despite being rejected by nearly every relevant academic field? Part of the answer is timing. Chariots of the gods arrived in 1968, right as humanity prepared to reach the moon, a moment already saturated with space-age wonder and a growing public suspicion of official institutions. Part of the answer is that von Däniken framed his critics not as correcting errors, but as a threatened establishment hiding inconvenient truths, a framing that made rejection feel like confirmation to sympathetic readers. Part of the answer is television. His work helped inspire and popularize ideas that were later repackaged for a new audience, beginning with a History Channel special in 2009 and developing into an ongoing series that remains active today, blurring the line between documentary and hypothesis. And part of the answer is a genuinely uncomfortable pattern that scholars have identified. The theory has repeatedly and disproportionately targeted non-European civilizations, especially Egypt, Mesoamerica, the Andes, and Polynesia, although European sites such as Stonehenge have also been drawn into it at times. Critics argue that this framework often treats indigenous achievement as inherently suspicious, transferring credit away from the people who actually built these places. That is not a minor footnote. It is one of the most serious and consistent criticisms raised by historians and archaeologists working in these very regions. None of the cases examined here provides credible evidence of extraterrestrial intervention. Some archaeological questions genuinely remain open, but an unanswered question is not evidence for the extraordinary claim that filled that gap for so many readers. What the evidence does show is ancient societies solving difficult problems with local knowledge, skilled labor, and cultural systems that become clearer the more closely they are studied on their own terms. Egyptian engineers who moved and stacked more than 2 million limestone blocks using ramps, rope, and coordinated labor. Nazca artisans who translated enormous figures onto open desert using nothing more than stakes and cord. Maya astronomers and artists who encoded an entire cosmology, gods, ancestors, and the structure of the afterlife itself, into a single carved stone lid. None of these achievements need an alien explanation. They need the one explanation the ancient astronaut theory consistently refuses to give ancient people credit for: skill, patience, and generations of accumulated, very human knowledge. Erich von Däniken spent his final years insisting he had been right all along, that extraterrestrials had shaped our past and promised to return. He never produced verifiable evidence for either claim. What he left behind instead was a durable template: take a genuine mystery, skip past the research already explaining it, and fill the remaining gap with wonder. An unanswered question is not a blank space into which any story can be inserted. The honest version of that wonder does not require aliens. It requires looking more closely at what people actually built, how they understood their world, and what evidence they left behind. Subscribe if you want to keep following the questions that don't have clean answers. See you in the dark.